I've had this theory about the key of life for a while now. I like to call it uncompromising creativity. You put those two words together, they sort of create a space in your mind that maybe you're not familiar with. And it's because those two things, those two words, don't really usually match. Somehow they don't match up. The word compromised is a very angry adjective. Unable to function optimally, especially with regard to immune response, sounds like a very sad thing. Yet we use the word compromised in our society in a different way. We hear, well, you have to compromise. This is what's going on with your life, this is going on with your job, so you have to just compromise. And most of the time, it's your creativity and the most intrinsic parts of ourselves that we're asked to compromise. Just pretend they don't exist and maybe they'll go away. And if we change it and we use the word uncompromising and we apply it to our creativity, it looks quite different when you see it on the board. Not admitting that you're going to give up a part of yourself that makes you and all of your life better sounds better to me. I saw this in the New Yorker this week, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to put that in the presentation. Because seriously, that is how it feels. What do you want to be when you give up? When I was a kid, I loved writing. All I ever wanted to do was something that came from my imagination, and every story I wrote, which there were a lot of them, and I would recreate dialogue from police blotters in the newspaper or things that I saw on television that the journalists I was so enamored by were reading, these whole dialogues of life, what happens, and journalism to dialogue, everything. I just was amazed. I wanted to be the next editor-in-chief of Ms. Magazine. And I was encouraged by everyone in my life, my educators, my parents, my friends, to be creative, to keep using that voice, to keep expressing myself over and over again. And it was that encouragement that really propelled me until I hit about middle school. And then when I hit middle school, something happened. I was growing up in Seattle, Washington, in a place where Boeing was everything. And the so-called thriving middle class is what we were all part of. And all of a sudden, at about 7th grade, I wasn't encouraged to write stories anymore. I was encouraged to be either a secretary or an astronaut. Pick one. Which one are you going to do with yourself? Because your choices are going to narrow as you grow. And man, was that like hitting a brick wall. For those of us who were put in gifted programs and pulled out of the mainstream education and made aware that it was so predominantly important that we never give up ourselves and who we are and never lose our voices, to just be told all of a sudden, well, but not anymore. So essentially, that's what happened to me. And once it was up to me to keep on being creative and keep on writing, I kind of lost my nerve. Like, all of a sudden, I didn't have someone saying, hey, what are you working on? Hey, that one-act play you wrote was so much fun. Are we ever going to do that again? People just stopped asking. And so I stopped offering. And then pretty soon I just quit school. I dropped out, never got a high school diploma. And I began what I guess would turn into your classic idea of depression. And I was depressed, just breathing in and out every day. And I didn't understand all that. We didn't have the dialogue that we have today about mental health. And now I've come to believe, after raising 3 kids, myself, being married twice, going through in and out of corporate jobs, having successes and having failures, I understand how important my creativity actually was so that my brain could continue dealing effectively with everything. And then I thought, if everyone's creative mind is like that, then maybe that's why so many people are ending their lives. Maybe that's why so many people are giving up over and over again. And nowadays, they'll even give you medication so that you just don't think about so much how giving up affects your life. There are 5 directives of creativity on the human brain. And this, of course, won't surprise anyone. Positive emotion, engagement, accomplishment, meaning, and the ability to have positive relationships. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but just about every divorce that happens because all of this stops happening. When people lose hope, when they give up on just having this positive reaction to everything in the world, first, not last, but first, generally, these are the things that are missing, and things start to go haywire. This is from a meme I follow. It is a quote by Dolly Parton from her book. And I follow this Tumblr blog that posts everything she ever writes. And I saw this one, and I realized that I was this cat. That it had been 15 years since I had written anything. And I don't know what made me stop and think about it at that moment. I just realized that I had completely given up on my creativity. Everything else in my life was still there. I had skills that I had developed. I had gone to college. I was thinking about going on and starting master's program, and then I was going to go and be an educator. And I thought, well, that's kind of a lie. What would I educate people about if I'm just going to follow these motions and not do what my heart is really telling me I want to do with myself? Then I'm not going to be a great person. And if I'm not going to be a great person, then why should I say anything to anyone? Really, unless I might not have great things to say. So, instead of taking the sleeping pills that my psychiatrist had given me to get over my insomnia all at the same time, I had a bottle of pills on the table. My second marriage was over. My kids were all staring at me, asking, "What are you going to do next, Mom?" And the first thing I thought was, I'm going to take those pills, and I'm just going to be done. Then I don't have to worry about it anymore. I don't have to worry about compromising. I don't have the courage or the strength to do anything else about it. And then, instead of taking those pills, I started writing poetry, which sounds insane, but I did. And pretty soon, I was published. By the end of the month, I had lit magazines that were sending me letters accepting poetry that I'd written. And I write the poetry in the time that it was normally just really stressed out, thinking about everything I couldn't change in my life and everything maybe that I could have done differently not to be as sad as I was. And once I allowed myself the space, I was able to actually do something worthwhile as far as I was concerned on my creative self. This is Max. This is my youngest son as the Flash. See, right here you can see what I was up against, okay? This is just 1 out of the 3. And to Max, you just do what you want to do, and then everything's going to be okay. As long as you can speak to it, you have an excuse, no one's going to hassle you. This is what my littlest one taught me, actually. And so I used him as one of my directives to remember the 7 rules, because when I see that picture of my son, who's now almost 15, he probably wouldn't like the fact that I'm using the picture of him as the Flash, but it reminds me how important it is to remember what I'm trying to remember now every day. The first step is to say no. No to all of the compromised things. No to all of the friends who just need help. No to extra nights of TV binging. No to every friend who has a project they just want you to take a look at. When you have this much time already in your life for creativity, as a creative individual, you need every minute of that time. So you have to learn how to say no. And you can take up the craft that you always loved doing, take up the guitar, learn how to sing, pick up a pen, start painting. Make space for it in your life by saying no, and don't feel bad about it. 2, be you. Your creative self comes from a place inside of you that is very, very sacred. If you're anything like me, and I assume that everyone has a creative side, you hear about people having a creative side, but I think that we have a creative core, and everything else comes from that. I know that it helps me to believe that I'm just being myself, and I'm just expressing myself, and somehow everything is okay and a little better when I'm doing that. I have a sense of maybe identity that I wouldn't have otherwise. So you have to be yourself, whatever that is. 3, curiosity is magical. You can be curious about things. You can wonder what would happen if I were to write this thing that I've always thought about writing, or you can do something that seems kind of crazy, like rewrite the lyrics to your favorite song, turn a song that is a pop song into a country song, and just see how it changes, and see what kind of expression you can make of something, anything that comes from inside you. Embrace imperfection. This is a really big one, because you might not be the best writer, you might not be the best painter, you might not have the most amazing karaoke voice that anyone has ever heard. However, if you embrace that, if you realize that it's okay not to be perfect, not to have some ideal that you're trying to live up by, and you don't have someone like Max kicking you and telling you, come on, Mom, get up there and do that, get up there and do that. You just accept it. And the sooner that you embrace that imperfection and own it and mess up, it's okay to mess up, you'll feel better. And if you don't try, you're never, ever going to know if it's something that works for you or if it's something that doesn't work for you. Number 5 is talk about your passion. People love to hear about creative endeavors. They want to know what you're doing. They want to know what you're thinking. They want to know what's going on inside of your head. And the sooner you learn to talk about what you're doing, hey, I wrote a poem. Hey, I'm working on this song. Oh my gosh, I finished a 1-act play. People will just realize that that's something that you're doing, that your personality as a creative person, you're not only bringing joy and happiness to yourself, but you're bringing joy and happiness and courage to other people who say, hey, I've got a guitar in the garage that's attached to an amp that might still work. Maybe I can wail on that for a while and see how it makes me feel. Well, you're never going to know if you don't make mistakes first and try and not take yourself too seriously while you're making them. 6, and this is a big, big, big one. Probably should be up at 1, but I put it at 6 just so I could hold your attention this long. Make time and space. And when I say that, I mean inside and out. Clear the space in your head. Your hard drive space gets full just like it does on your computer. And I see that little wheel sometimes under my sunglasses and have to just stop and realize, okay, I've got to make some more space for the work that I'm doing. And when I say work, I mean play. Because really, it is like play. After you allow yourself to be creative for a while, you realize that you're actually giving yourself a release and a rest from everything else that otherwise bogs you down, that we have to do in our everyday lives anyway. So if you make time and space, clear a corner in your room, take a night a week, start with 1 night a week, start with an hour a week, where you're just going to do nothing except express yourself, whether it's an air guitar and turning up your music and dancing, or writing a poem that might not be so bad, or singing or dancing or whatever it is. Yoga. Some people have to actually validate their yoga. So you validate your yoga at that time and you allow yourself that. And the sooner you do it and practice it, people will just start realizing, oh, this is that time in this person's life. This person that I happen to care about and love needs this time in this space. So we're going to give them that time and space that they've taken for themselves. And then you make it an everyday invention. This is Willy Wonka. Everyone knows who Willy Wonka is. Roald Dahl's character from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And he said, invention is 93% perspiration, 6% electricity, 4% evaporation, and 2% butterscotch ripple. But what he was actually saying was, you have to invent constantly. And the more invention you actually spend time on, the less of anything else you can spend time on, because it's going to occupy all of those faculties. Everything that you're doing during this time of invention, you're giving back to yourself, you're giving to the people in your lives, you're becoming a better partner, you're becoming a better parent. And my gosh, if we can extend that to our children and to our spouses and to our friends, and we are constantly, continually allowing them the space and the time that they need to express themselves creatively, then what kind of a world are we all going to live in? If it's okay to do everything that makes you feel wonderful. Now, please, if you take nothing else away from this talk and this incredible program we've had here today, think about how important it is to go forward, embrace your curiosity, embrace your creativity, accept everything about yourself, and just do the same in everyone else every single day. What are we going to have to fight about? Creativity is a wild mind and a disciplined eye. As educators, we have the opportunity to go out and educate and tell everyone that their creative life is where they start, not where they finish. And if we're lucky, no one else ever has to give up on their creativity. Ever, 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 ever again. Thank you.